Hi, and welcome back to That's Entertainment, the weekly entertainment show where we look at all the interesting news from last week this week. There's been some disappointing news from Paramount. They pulled Top Gun Maverick from its 2nd of July release date. The eagerly awaited Tom Cruise sequel will now land on the 19th of November, almost a year after it was originally planned from its Christmas 2020 release. November 19th was to have been the release date of Cruise's next movie, Mission Impossible 7, but Paramount have moved that back over 6 months to May of 2022. The studio did offer cinemas one piece of good news, though. The release of G.I. Joe, the spin-off Snake Eyes, has moved forward from October 21st to July 23rd. Universal reacted quickly to the Top Gun Maverick news. They brought the release of their latest installment of the Purge franchise, Forever Purge, forward a week from July 9th to July 2nd, so cinemas will at least have one movie to offer customers that weekend. In related news, Sony also moved the release date forward for Peter Rabbit 2. It will now open 2 weeks earlier on June the 18th. And the big question facing worried cinema owners now must surely be, just how likely is it that Universal will stick to their guns and still release Fast and Furious 9 on June 25th, 1 week ahead of the big US holiday weekend? On a more positive note, there was encouraging news from the UK. The latest research there suggests film fans are eager to return when cinemas can reopen in May. 59% of respondents cited the cinema as their most missed out home entertainment activity. 40% of audiences are planning to return within the first few weeks of cinemas reopening, and a further 36% within a couple of months. And 93% of cinema goers who returned when cinemas briefly reopened last year enjoyed an overwhelmingly positive experience. And 99% said they were satisfied with the health and safety measures at their local cinemas. Well, that is excellent news, and I think the cinemas that we've been in contact with have been spending a tremendous amount of time focusing on the communication with their local audiences. And I think this has been reflected very well through the UKCA and the other various bodies that are there to help the cinema industry navigate these tricky times. So well done, hats off to you. I know it was a short period over which we were open last summer, but I think if we follow the protocols that were developed during that period, the opening that we're all planning in May should be easier. Most encouraging news was those who have rented or purchased features were highlighted as the most likely to return to cinemas when they reopen, and 2/3 of respondents in this survey also said they favoured the cinema over home entertainment release due to its immersive experience and access to new titles. Further proof, if any, was needed that cinemas and streaming services can coexist side by side, with film fans choosing to watch movies on both the big and the small screen. So, good news there too. Perhaps surprisingly, the topic of censorship has been back in the news this week. Italy has officially abolished film censorship, although in practice the government hasn't banned a film there since 1998. A new commission that will include the film industry figures, education experts, and animal rights activists will now review each new film's classification, which will initially be set by film distributors themselves based on existing audience age brackets. However, in India, it's suddenly become much harder for filmmakers to appeal against censorship. If they disagree with any of the cuts made or the certification their film is given, the federal government has scrapped the Information and Broadcasting Ministry's Film Certification Applegate Tribunal. From now on, any appeal from a filmmaker has to go straight to the High Court. And in China, the censorship of this year's Oscars continues. A report from Variety flags that last month the Chinese authorities ordered local media channels not to transmit live coverage of the Oscars ceremony. And soon after, Hong Kong's top free-to-air TV network, Television Broadcast, said it would drop its coverage as well, despite having carried the event every year since 1969. Now China's influential online cultural platform Douban has removed practically all of its coverage of the event. The reason? The Academy-nominated Norwegian director Anders Hammer 35-minute-long film Do Not Split, which chronicles Hong Kong's intense street protests against the closer ties with Beijing, is running in the best documentary short subject race. As quoted, Hammer told Variety that the more China censored coverage related to his short, the more Beijing was simply proving the film's point for him. Do Not Split is a movie about how basic democratic rights are challenged and are disappearing in Hong Kong. So Beijing's reaction is just in line with the story that we were covering in the movie, he said, from how I see that they deal with freedom of expression issues in general. Unfortunately, it's not a surprise. In the latest VOD news, Just Watch have published their analysis of the US streaming market in Q1 of this year. HBO Max now has 8% market share thanks in part to Warner Brothers debuting their latest theatrical releases simultaneously. Godzilla vs. Kong is thought to have given the service a significant boost at the end of March. Peacock saw its market share grow by 5%. After a year, they have 33 million subscribers, but it isn't known how many of them have signed up to the free advertising supported model and how many are paying for the premium version. Netflix is still number one, but in March, Disney Plus overtook Hulu to become the third largest streaming service in the US. Both platforms, that's Hulu and Disney Plus, are owned by Disney, and their combined market share gives the House of Mouse second place when you look at the overall figures. Disney are also doing well in India too, according to Omdia's latest 2021 online video market and consumer trends report. Between them, Disney Plus's Hotstar offering and Netflix now account for 50% of all the SVOD revenue there, and almost 80% of all the subscription revenue. Thanks primarily to the pandemic, revenue grew by 142% last year, from 265 million in 2019 to 639 million at the end of 2020. The importance of local productions to streamers is also on the rise. Almost 400 original films and series will be created this year, with Netflix and Amazon Prime contributing $340 million, or just over half of 2021's total investment in production. That's incredible news. And we are going to see lots of interesting cultural artifacts coming out of India too now as a result of this. I mean, I've certainly been enjoying my subscription to Netflix and viewing all the wonderful Korean content that was very difficult to find before Netflix started focusing on its international appeal and making sure that content was equally shared across its platforms globally. So, new stories, new opportunities, new platforms, and what's interesting is also in countries like India, a high proportion of people willing to pay the subscription fees. Television Business International picked up on Netflix's growing success in Russia. Netflix could reach around 1 million subscribers by the end of the year, an impressive achievement in a territory that is one of the world's leading consumers of pirated video, particularly as much of Netflix's content is not dubbed into Russian. If anyone hasn't checked out To the Lake, the Russian series about chronicling the survival of a family as they travel across Russia in order to escape a pandemic, that was a great show, and I thoroughly recommend, if you've got some hours, to go and binge watch that one. There was great news for streamers from France this week too. At present, the likes of Netflix will have to wait until 36 months or 3 years after a film's theatrical release before they can add it to their platform. A new proposal could see that window come down to as little as 6 months for streaming services and pay TV operators, depending on the level of investment they make into French productions that must initially debut in cinemas. Surely it's no coincidence then that Netflix just announced plans to fund 27 original French productions this year. This shows that money talks, and even in a country like France, which has been uber protective around its cinema rights, and I think you can't even advertise films on TV in that market. That's why that market's been so advanced with online advertising. But it's a restrictive environment with a lot of unionization and a lot of different things that protect film releases there. Certainly the French at Cannes form the largest cohort of people making angry noises at Netflix. And I think Netflix will just bypass the noise and just move into funding production and eventually get allies on that side. So fair play to Netflix, but it just goes to show that scale matters. And if you've got the additional budget, you can pretty much buy your way out of any problem. Thanks very much for listening. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, we publish both to LinkedIn and to YouTube with these videos. And have a great week. Goodbye.